All right. We are on air and it is 4 o'clock. I know Councilmember Peacock is not going to be able to make it. He had something come up. I don't know if anybody else plans to attend, but we'll go ahead and get started with the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for Thursday, May 26, 2022. We have 2 items on the agenda today. We have our regular public transit report and also an update on ADA improvements at the Central Library, as well as a current status report on the building condition and how it's holding up. So a couple items, and we'll see if anybody comes in. And we'll go ahead and get started with item number 1, which is the public transit ridership. We have Taylor here.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go through the report and happy to answer any questions as I go through it. Just want to bring up first that we had a on-site kickoff meeting for renovating the 320 East Comanche site for a new transit center on May 13th, and we've been working with the architect and their team to identify the best way to go about into making it functional. It's definitely not going to be a Taj Mahal, but it will be a functional transit center with a restroom, not a porta potty, and with a water bottle fill station, which we don't have anything right now. And I know that's something we've discussed for a long time.
Years, yes.
So we're very happy about that. That's 2 things I made very apparent that we need.
If you're not familiar with it, ever since OU filled in the South Oval and moved the transit center hub over to the Brook Street lot, it used to be right next to one of the buildings that was always open, and there were bathrooms and water fountains and vending machines in there. And when they moved it to the parking lot, it's out in the middle of a parking lot. And we discussed a few years ago in this committee about trying to install a water fountain and restrooms, and we were able to get porta potties out there, but the installing a water fountain proved to be something that would be very expensive and difficult because there wasn't, I guess, a water line very close to there, and and we'd have to run it through the whole parking lot to get to it. So we weren't able to do that. It was not an ideal situation, especially in the summer.
Right.
So thankfully, have some real facilities.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that. Still working towards, again, what it's going to take to do that, but we're making some good progress just over the last couple weeks. The Nelson Nygaard work to modify the Go Norman transit plan to reflect that new transit center location at 320 East Comanche is making some good progress. I'm hoping to come next month with a presentation to you all on what that looks like. Again, the majority of the work is really what the routes look like downtown. So they're not going in and around the depot as we visualized with the Go Norman transit plan initially. Now we're changing it to that new location, right? So we wanted to have them come back and help us think through that a little bit. And after that work is complete, we will begin the process of going out to the public to discuss the route changes before they're finalized. And we begin really changing bus stops, adding bus stops, and doing that work. So a lot of work to be done.
Did we finalize that? Because I remember we had talked about different places where bus stops could be, but I know Councilmember Holman and I had talked to you about adding something back to Brooks or looking at a few different stops like that. So I don't know that that has ever been represented to us with some of the changes that we had discussed.
Well, we did modify the East Lindsay route slightly before the plan was adopted last June, but we were always going to come back to the public and back to you all before the routes would be finalized, and that's where some of the wiggling could happen, right?
Okay. Do you know when that's going to be?
Well, once we get done with the work that Nelson Nygaard's doing right now, and we have we kind of start fresh again with route layouts and everything, that's when we'll start that public hearing process.
You don't have an ETA?
No, we have a schedule that we're working, trying to get in our mind how we can best have it flow and still reach our target date of maybe next August of implementing everything.
Okay.
So we're working through that, but the changes involve the public participation process, the bus stop changes, and then the marketing process to actually implement the route changes, as well as driver and their bid process for their work. So twice a year, they actually pick what routes and they're going to drive as per their union contract. So we have to work around that schedule as well. So that's why we're kind of looking at this schedule and trying to make sure we can actually meet a certain date. But the public participation process will be at the beginning, and we anticipate starting at the beginning of the fiscal year, probably, just so we can stay on track. Let's see. For grants, we're still waiting on the raised grant application process for them to come back and tell us what projects were selected, and that was for those pantograph chargers to charge the electric buses while they're en route. And thank you, council, for approving our resolutions of support on Tuesday for going after some more competitive funding with FTA to replace some more used, worn-out buses. We're going to submit those by the deadline on May 31st, and we hope to be successful in that and continue to stretch our local dollars. We've been really successful. Thankfully, with all your support for stretching our local dollars to replace buses so far. Just a long process because it's about a 12-month out lead time once we get that PO issued. So we're about to start seeing the fruits of our labor with the 2 electric buses that will come in the end of the summer. With that, I just skipped to the ridership on the first page of the performance report. In April, we had almost 25,000 people ride the transit system, and that was up just 400 riders from March, but still an increase. And that was about a 50% increase over April of 2021 in terms of ridership per day, which is a really good metric because some months have more days of service than others. So ridership per day is a really good metric to look at. So we're about 50% more than last year. And then I just wanted to point out for bicycle users, we had 760 people use bicycles when using our public transit system. So that's a really good metric to keep an eye on too. It allows our transit system to reach farther. The bike racks that we have on the buses, it just lets them go further than the quarter of a mile walk shed that people are more attuned to doing. So that's a pretty high metric, and it was up 61% over last April in terms of bicycle usage on the bus. So with that, I have 2 last things. Staff have worked with Sarah Kaplan to transition the management of the scooters over to me and my team. So we're still working out some details, but we created a transit@normanok.gov email. So the email correspondence, if people have problems or just want to submit their thoughts on the website about the scooters, will come to me and my team now. And we're working on fine tuning that over the next month or so. So that way that process will be totally in the Transit and Parking Division. And then we hosted the Oklahoma State Transit Association Conference the last few days, Monday through Wednesday. And it was a great conference. We had a lot of great sessions. Something that we become passionate about in the transit industry is human trafficking, and it's a really big problem on public transit. I think about 42% of human trafficking events occur on public transit, either rail or bus, in our country. So that's something that was a big focus for our conference, and something that we're working on. And actually, an Embark OKC bus driver within the last few months actually saved somebody from that. We were able to highlight that. So we're very proud of that effort, and we continue to try to train our bus drivers to see that, see something, say something type of thing, and just call out those situations. So, and Mayor Clark was, sorry.
I want to ask really quick, and maybe you're going to get to this, but I know I had talked to you last week about that company that was going to come to that transportation expo. That was similar to VIA, but not VIA.
Is it ETA?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you talked to anyone else that was out there, or.
We did talk to a few vendors. There was a couple companies that provide technology for microtransit, but they don't necessarily provide turnkey services in-house. They can do that through other vendors. So I did get some contacts from other companies. I can't remember the specific one we talked about though, off the top of my head, but there were a couple there that I did speak to. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I was going to mention with the conference, Mayor Clark did win Transit Champion of the Year I really think it's for her work over the last 3 years of her term, with us transitioning the service, the standalone public transit tax that a lot of you worked on with us, but that we went around and presented to groups, and was just happy to honor her and the work she's been doing for transit. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Well, just like our sales tax growth appears every month, our transit continues to grow, or at least get hard to see compared to what it was like before, since we weren't really running the system, or we had just taken it over a few months really before
Right.
COVID had hit hard. So, but it is encouraging to see. Have we done any kind of polling of passengers recently about why they're riding the bus?
No,
That
but
might be
every fall,
interesting.
Embark does a survey, so that'll be coming.
Be interested to know if how many people are riding because of gas prices, or because of other costs of things, or just people that are riding the bus because they always have, or whatever.
Right.
So that'll be interesting when that comes out.
And is that, I'd like to introduce,
Yeah.
I think you guys have
Yes.
seen Dr. Marilyn Dillon before, but is that right, Marilyn? Every fall we do a survey on, okay.
Yeah, and that is one of the questions is what do you primarily use transit for, whether you have work or school, things like that. One of the things too that you might want to mention is we're getting a quote too, because normally that survey just happens on the fixed route side on the larger buses. And I've asked them to do the same type of a survey on a much smaller scale with less questions for our paratransit customers as well. So I'm hoping that that quote comes into the reasonable amount so that we can add that to the
Yeah.
survey.
Would it ask, like, yes, why are you using it to go to work or school, but why are you using public transit instead of driving or walking or
Let me
biking
double-check.
or whatever it
I
may be?
want I know
So I'd be
that
interested to
question was
know.
on it one year, but I'm not sure if it's, because there's a standard set of questions and there's a few extras that we kind of move in and out based on what we want to know.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, I know that was in there, but I'm not sure if it's the move in and out set of questions or the ones that come every year, but I'll check.
It could
I'll
be
tell you right now.
interesting to know if or how many people are riding because of gas prices or,
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah. So,
And I would
okay.
say that's one of the great values of working with Embark. When we were at the university, we didn't do that annual survey, and that's a
Right.
really good benchmark. You can see from year to year how people's moods change or how the makeup of ridership change. So I think last year we came back to council after the survey was done and gave a presentation. So we'll make sure to do that again this year.
Yeah, and I think it too shows that Saturday, it was a good decision to bring back Saturday service. That it's definitely needed. A lot of people are using it, and so I
Yeah.
think it's justified.
Yeah, almost 2,200 people in last month, which is it's really good,
Yeah.
especially for the time frame we offer currently.
Okay. Anything else from either of you? Would you like to add anything since you came all the way down here?
Well, I saw you had some interest in the human trafficking story. So I was gonna give you a little bit more detail about this. So
Please.
back in 2021, we had a bus operator that noticed a young girl on his bus, and she was behaving oddly. She was very, very scared, and they had just recently done their human trafficking awareness training. And so he kept an eye on her while he was driving and waited till she was the only passenger on his bus, and then he pulled it over at a bus stop, and he said, "Something's wrong, are you okay?" And she didn't give him a lot of information, which is not unusual. He's a male and she was a female. So he said, "Well, I want you to sit right behind me, and I'm dead, what they call deadheading back to the transit center." In other words, that was the end of his day. He said, "I want you to sit right back behind you, and we'll get you some help." And so he took her back to the transit center. One of the route supervisors took her in the office, just kind of got a little more information, and it was rather serendipitous because we have a partnership with the Palomar Family Justice Center in Oklahoma City for domestic violence. And it just so happened that our operator that's embedded into that program was also finishing her day and was stopped at the transit center to use the restroom. And so as soon as they saw her, they were, because she's specifically trained in how to speak with them, how to talk with them, how to interview them and everything. And so she interviewed her, realized what was going on, and said, "Come on." And they actually created a safe path for her where no one could see her, got her out of the transit center just in case she was still being followed, took her over to Palomar. She was connected with law enforcement, and we got an update about 2 months ago. She's stable. She's decided to stay here in Oklahoma City. She's been taken through 15 states.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
decided to stay here
Goodness
because she had no
gracious.
family, and so they've got her set up in housing. And those same operators and the supervisor that won at the OTA convention are actually flying out tomorrow to Indianapolis because they won the Harriet Tubman National Award for Human Trafficking
Wow.
Awareness.
Wow.
So pretty proud of them.
That's awesome. That's great. It's
Very
sad,
good,
but
yeah,
it's-
that's
It's
a
good that they
interesting
pay
story there.
attention and do that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with
yeah.
us. Yeah, great work.
Yeah, I did just read about a story in, I guess, a teenager at a Mavericks game in Dallas with her dad. Got kidnapped from the
Saw
game
that.
and turned up in Oklahoma City
What?
just this last week or two. So
Wow.
Oh my God.
yeah, like 15 or so.
And since we're talking about it, the state attorney general's office has a certification process for agencies to go through to be certified to talk with human trafficking victims, and they gave us a spreadsheet of all three of the agencies in the state that are actually certified. So if anybody listening, or if any of you all know of an agency that might be interested in doing that certification, I would love to have Norman on there, at least with one agency. Just if it happens that we have a case
Absolutely.
in Norman, we have some place to send those folks, right? So
Yeah.
might keep that in
Absolutely.
mind.
Yeah, you can always call us and we'll come with them.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I would also take a moment to congratulate Oklahoma City on their receiving their first bus rapid bus today, unveiling it, I guess. And so it's the first rapid bus. They said in the region.
What is
Yeah,
rapid
Tulsa
bus?
has bus rapid transit. They started a couple years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
What's that?
It's like an express bus route. It's got its own built lane for it, basically.
Most of the time.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
So-
like, yeah.
It's like streetcar on wheels. So they have dedicated platforms, not just bus stops, but pretty substantial bus stops platforms. So just like what you see at streetcar, it's elevated, so there isn't deploying of the ramp or anything. It's all level, and the frequency is higher, and
It's like every 7 to 15 minutes.
it's gonna be 12 minutes.
Yeah.
The buses are a little nicer. The one they unveiled actually has leather seats in it, if
It's
that makes
got,
sense.
it's got LED wheel hubs too that light up.
But it'll run from Oklahoma City downtown up Classen to Northwest Expressway and Mid-Meridian and come back. And
Expressway.
there's about
Oh, wow.
20% of the region's jobs are in that corridor. I can't remember how many the population is, but it's
Yeah,
it hits a lot of markers.
It's almost 80% of the residential housing is along the corridor, within a, I think, 5-mile radius of it.
Yeah.
And then 40%, or what do you, I think it's 20% of the jobs in that area above that corridor.
Yeah, so it'll start in fall of 2023. So they're just now getting their vehicles and starting work on constructing those platforms. But as Mayor Holt said today, it's the closest thing we'll get to Subway
Yeah.
as we'll get. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like that
Yeah.
type of service, really streamlined and trying to be efficient and move traffic.
Part of its route is along the old interurban route on Classen specifically, but they mentioned, Councilmember Cooper mentioned that because most of it's in his district. So he mentioned that it was really cool that it's following much of the old path of the old streetcar system. So that's good for Oklahoma City, but also good for us too, I think, in the grand scheme of public transit in our metro area. So, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Taylor. Item number 2 on the agenda is, again, an update on ADA improvements at the Central Library, as well as an update, a status report on the building and condition. This came up, I had some members of Progressive Independence reach out with concerns about the new library, that it was maybe not meeting all ADA regulations, which surprising to me, I guess, because I assume that a new building has to meet all current guidelines when it comes to that. So I'm not sure exactly what specific issues about the building are not meeting their standard. But I was interested to find out some more. They indicated there may have been a prior discussion about this, that Maybe we didn't follow up during COVID. I'm not sure about that, but thought it would be a good idea for us to talk about that and also just get a general update on how the building is holding up 3 years in, and is it still working the way we thought? Is it still working the way it was designed? Are there things that need attention? And it kind of dawned on me because we had a city meeting there a few months ago, and I was walking up the stairs, and there's like wood etching above, and the light was flickering, and it kind of looked like it could just be a feature that was part of the deal. So I asked the library, I was like, is it supposed to do that? Or is that a feature? And she goes, no, I don't think so. I said, well, okay. So maybe there's other things about the building that are, who knows what, just a light that was messed up. But started getting me thinking that, well, it's been a couple of years. It's heavily used, as we all know. It's very popular. And so just like we did with getting an update on Lindsay Street last month, get an update on how this one's doing. So we got Cynthia here
Yeah.
to
Well, thank you so much for opening up the discussion, Chair. I think it's really important that, sometimes we take for granted just because it's a new building that everything, is just like spot on.
Yeah.
And we plan for it to be, but the reality is that it does take for us to continuously work with our partners that are there, and also, just keep an eye on things to make sure that we're being responsible as well. So in regards to the ADA focus of the discussion, I just want to cover a little bit about how we're looking at compliance and commitment from a City of Norman perspective, focused around the library, but also just overall, because I think it's important that we recognize that our commitment just goes beyond for all our programs and services. And then also we'll talk a little bit about the library as well, because that's the focus of your question, and the organization of Progressive Independence, and really anyone else that has the need for this accessibility piece. Some of the steps that we've taken, and then also our plans forward to continue that relationship, that partnership, to get things, just continuously on board and working. So in regards to the Central Library, it was really a good, I think, approach to look at it from the timeline perspective, to really understand our engagement overall and our responsibility overall. So since the library was opened in 2019, late 2019 at that, quickly after, there were some identification of pieces that didn't meet ADA standards. It was items that, of course, are thought to be included within the construction plans. Those are requirements that we have that we follow. There's also the International Building Code that are included in the different drafts in architect plans. I can't talk to why in that contractor activity and that, creation of the building, there were some things that were missed. The important part is that they were quickly identified. As I mentioned, just months after the building opened, we had this Macintosh report to clarify exactly what those deficiencies were. So early on 2020, we received the report identifying very fine detail. So the numbers over 200 specific line items that were identified. And it sounds like a lot, but I mean, they were so finite to where it's even like the placement of a placard, 2 inches off, or the placement of a dispenser, half an inch off, something to that effect. So, which is fantastic that it's so detailed, but it does add to that gravity of saying, there's a 200 plus line item report. That then we have the responsibility of identifying priority rankings, so making sure that we are looking at those egregious items first, such as entrances, such as facilities, such as restrooms, and then working our way to those things of, moving a placard and that type of thing. So that's what was developed, again, early on 2020, and then, of course, as we all know, then we've got COVID. as we roll through the COVID piece and really work our way out of it, then we also transitioned internally through our ADA coordinator roles. But throughout all of that, we were doing our best to really continue with work and improvement. So we haven't stopped since the library opened its doors. We have continued with improvements, and we've continued with identifying our approach to correcting things. So with that,
Councilmember Hall, sorry.
Yeah, I also just wanted to add that the library was closed for a significant amount of time during that period too, to, I'm assuming, allow us to be able to do some of that work, so.
that would open up the availability for us to go in if the folks were also able to come
Yeah.
in and work it,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So it is a combination.
Yeah.
Now the space is open and available, but now we don't have the people that actually can come
Yeah.
and work. But great point.
It wasn't
because
open to
it
the
all-
public, yeah.
Yes, and it all comes back to the fact of how really that dead space of time did impact our story of being able to say the library opened late 2019 and here we are 2022 and now we still have a list of things. So it all really does come together
Yeah.
for that full picture. From the City of Norman perspective, there's 5 tiers of ADA guidelines and commitments. We fall under Tier 2, which covers government entities. And so again, our focus is our program and services. And so how we're able to open the doors and make sure that anyone who comes through is able to take part in our services, in our programs, and our activities. And so, of course, with the library being one of our buildings, we definitely, give attention to that. These are the 5 different tiers that I just mentioned, and ADA has been around for a while, and we definitely are committed to following those guidelines. This kind of talks a little bit to that priority listing that I just mentioned. So with a report that has over 200 lines, there's a lot to work through. And again, that priority piece of accessible entrances, of having facilities, restroom facilities, having those critical pieces that we can address and build plans towards are important. And then we break those down. So then once we step within the restroom, for instance, it's looking at, the dispenser distance of, length and height and, how far are those from the toilet seat? And, is there anything behind the toilet seat, like a little bench, to place your items or your books? And how far above is that? So there's so many different pieces. Then you move into the sink area and, is the skirting, is the height of the counter 34 inches, is, the soap dispenser. I mean, you can go on. And so here's where these lines just, sometimes develop. Now, sometimes they do work because we did go through and did a quick visit yesterday, Jesse and I, and there were some stalls that were right on point and there were some that were slightly off. So it is one that's very time consuming, but again, we are dedicated to making sure that we hit every piece and working in partnership with Jason's team in facilities maintenance, which they are doing their best to take care of all of our other city facilities as well as that. So it's a partnership of being able to time things up as well. So it's all a dance of making sure that we address the priority of the listing within the items, then address the other needs within the city and our facility maintenance crews. But we are definitely working just feverishly towards making sure that we can address and at least tell you where we're at with this.
Perfect.
With that, there are some items that have been completed, and so these are some of the handrails on the stairwells. Those were not accessible where they needed to have an extension at the bottom and the top of the stairwells that were further out, and those were completed. Some of these.
And this is the completed picture.
Yeah, these are
This is
completed.
the complete picture.
The kiosk at the entrance of the facility, Those were listed within the scope, but then upon further research, it was identified that for ADA compliance, it's public workstations, not employee workstations. However, in partnering with the library system, they still went ahead and made modifications to their workstations. So now they have this here that you can see that there's one that's a little bit lower than the other. And that's also a testament to the partnership that we have going with the public library system, is that, you know, they are willing to also do their part to ensure that compliance, and they've been great at that. This last picture is the hearing loop, and so that's one of the items that was installed initially to make sure that, you know, we were compliant on that end, and then there's a story that follows on that, but we did it. The work is continuous, so there are some things on there, and I mentioned entrance access is one of those very important things. This is one that has not been remediated yet, that we are working currently with the public library, the Pioneer Library System, and it is regarding the main entrance that's on the north side of the building. So as you can see, these security scanners, or the security magnets, they're in the way of the accessible push button for the door.
Yes.
And so you'd think, well, let's just scoot them, let's just move them. That was my first answer. And then I was told, well, yeah, they're grounded to the cement, to the concrete floor. So, you know, it's not that easy. Otherwise, it would have been done. So identifying that issue, then being able to look back through to our reporting, we were able to identify that Pioneer Library System said, you know, we'll take that one on. So again, that partnership, that they're willing to do the work to get it done. And we recently followed up with Caroline Dulworth over there, and they are looking into that. So there are things that are a progress and that are working, but there's also that partnership element.
My solution to that problem would be that the old library, the doors automatically opened sideways
Yeah.
instead of out. I don't know if it could be retrofitted to put those types of doors in, but that seems like there wouldn't need to be a button anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so, but because the way the door, there's not as much space on both sides of the doors to
Yeah.
go into the
Dang.
wall. But they,
That was real helpful at the old library.
Yeah. I mean, those are some design pieces that, you know,
Yeah.
good points, especially as we build, you know, new buildings to consider.
$40 million.
So leading beyond compliance is something that, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up? Oh, wait. Leading beyond compliance is a phrase that we've adopted at the City of Norman. And it's really because we want to do the work. We want to make sure that we are addressing any of those items that, you know, again, compliance is critical. But we want to go above and beyond that. And the hearing loop is one of those pieces, because you saw that it was checked off in one of the earlier slides, because it was. We installed a hearing loop. However, one of our residents came to us and let us know that he attended an event and it didn't work. And so we thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So we had that looked into. We had some specialists go and do some testing. And it turns out that the hearing loop was working, that it is installed. However, it's not installed to the capacity of the room. So it may have been that in the area, the spot that he was in, or something, you know, that the capacity just didn't really suffice for the needs that event had. So we considered the situation and decided to get them on board to redo the hearing loop. So actually, if you go to the library today, you'll see some of these boards lifted because they're installing a new hearing loop system. And that is something that we took on from the City of Norman ADA services approach to make sure that we are providing the best quality service, goods, and access to our residents. So now, it turns out, our participants, our attendees at the events will be able to have their hearing loop systems activated, whether they are in room A or B. The Oklahoma Redbud room opens up to 2 rooms if you'd like, or just 1. Or if it's open to the entire room, then the 2 systems will work in unison, so together. So that's something that we're really proud of, because it's something that we could have just said, you know what, it's compliant, and just kind of, kept moving. But that's not the style and the approach that we want to give for the quality of services of our residents should have. So that's a story that I'm very proud to share with you, and it should all be completed by this weekend. So we'll call Tom back out there to check it out. Also, along the line of leading beyond compliance, we're really working to push towards more educational programming. So again, not just making sure that things are hitting the compliance angle, but also engaging more of our residents. So as you see along 24th Northwest, you might see some of these signs. If you go to Lions Park, you'll see some of the signs that say this is an ADA project, and so they know that the sidewalks that are being built, that the ramps that are being rebuilt are because of ADA programming. A program that Jason and I are working on closely is the rebuilding of Andrews Playground, and that's something that came out of the ADA services function of identifying, what, we need to really address this barrier around the playground. And again, Jason's team was just right on point with helping us get designs and make sure that it's followed through. So partnerships all over the place, and that's ultimately what makes things happen. Lastly, we had a contractors informational session to really just remind and provide the approach of our value of ADA compliance. And that's something that isn't so typical, because then you wonder, these contractors, they should already know what the compliant laws are or not, as we're discussing here. But we wanted to make sure that they know that this is important to us, that we want them to have a communication and an open relationship with project managers, so that as they're building out, as they get the sketches, if they see something, they can talk to their project manager and inquire. And we had a wonderful turnout. Over 25 folks attended, different types of contractors, and all of them gave very positive feedback of the value of that time and being able to just hear about ADA and again, that collaborative approach with their project managers. So I know that goes above and beyond what you asked for regarding the Pioneer Library Central, but again, it's important that we provide the full picture of our ADA commitments.
Councilmember Hall, and see which one of you first.
I thank you. I love all the proactive steps that we've taken in the workforce, the contractor info session. I'm assuming that's something that you'll repeat every so often to keep drawing in new folks, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. We sent out a survey because we received feedback. In fact, some of the contractors, we received emails because we gave them a booklet, just kind of a handy thing to carry in their truck of, ADA guidelines. And one said, how do I order more? So now we've actually inspired them to be able to go have these conversations in their own areas. So we'll want to continue it. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
Councilmember Studley?
I love that you guys are revamping Andrews Park. That warms my heart. I had a citizen asked if there was a ADA hotline, if you will, so I love that this page was on here. Thank you. I think that if we could blast this out a little bit more, just so people are aware that there is a place where they can call in concerns. And then some of the concerns, since we're talking about ADA issues, and this lovely feller's here, I'm curious, Westwood Pool has no accessibility into the lazy river for someone with a wheelchair. It's just stairs down into it. Where I know the lap pool has a ramp. Is that something that we could look at adding in the future? Because there are some of our citizens that would love to get in the lazy river and have had difficulty doing it.
So there is what we believe is accessibility into the river. It's a step platform that you can roll your chair up to and transition into the lazy river. Part of the reason we don't have a chair that goes into the lazy river is because the current that has it in there would
Okay.
rip the chair and put the person in the
In
chair
the
along
river.
with everybody else in danger because there is a current that goes around there pushed by jets. So that is the ADA solution, which was also checked out by Macintosh to compliance for a lazy river.
So there's a platform where they can roll their chair
Yes,
up
there's a step
to and a rail.
on the steps closest to the where you enter the lazy river, closest to the golf course over there by Hole 9. You'll notice that there is a kind of a platform right next to those steps. So
Okay.
you roll your chair up next to that platform, transition to the step, and then go into the lazy river that way. And then
Okay.
that's the safest way, according to our builder Andy, consultants that we have to get enter the lazy river.
If a citizen has a suggestion of how to make it easier because they've had difficulties entering the river, are you guys open to listening?
We're always open to listen to suggestions, but it also would have to be safe for them and
Right.
everybody else that's inside the river as well.
Okay.
Probably have to like see that in action,
Right.
see how that works.
Right. It's
And we do have times where like JD McCarty Center comes out and they have many kids that are in chairs and they transition very easily using that platform that's right next to the steps.
I'm curious if have they had help with adults to do that, or is it they are doing it on their own? I'm wondering if adults' bodies are just heavier to lift themselves out and get down the steps. I don't know. I'll find out and get
You
back
do
to
have
you.
to go to the center island, right,
Yes.
to get on there.
Yes, and as we were building Westwood, we did have Macintosh that came in and did a full assessment during the construction of it, and we actually, the pitch of the bridge that goes across Westwood was incorrect, and the contractors had to go in there
Yeah.
and change that to a correct angle where it was safe for ADA compliant, for people to go over in wheelchairs.
Okay.
So it has had a full evaluation, and kind of like Cynthia was talking with the library, it came, during construction, we came back with a list of, I believe, Sean was the ADA coordinator at that time, but it was about 200 items, and we had the majority of those fixed during the construction phase before it opened.
Okay. And then the other question, which was kind of playing into the hotline, is just about sidewalks and stuff like that. So I'm assuming there's a type of, since we have plans for everything, is there some type of sidewalk plan to add additional sidewalks throughout?
We need to be kind of careful. You are talking about
Oh,
ADA
for
issues as
ADA.
it relates to the
Gotcha.
library. I don't think we
Okay.
can veer off way into other areas. too
Okay.
far.
Fair enough. I'll meet with you after.
I'll mention, Governor, you have a capital improvement program that includes a very robust ADA capital program every year. Sidewalks are in there, Lions Park is in there, all that stuff
Okay.
is in there if you want to look at or talk further.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was all my questions.
Okay, so things have been delayed a little bit, but we have been addressing the issues and we're still ongoing
Absolutely.
with that list of 200 items from big to the front door, I guess, to the maybe just placards on a wall
Yes.
not being the right height or something. Okay. Is there anything staff needs the council to do or think about, or are we good? We're just, it takes time. Is that kind of what you're thinking, or do we need to push for some more funding, or what would you suggest?
Well, thank you so much for that opportunity to share, what's needed.
Yeah.
Well, time is always a piece of just, understanding that these things do take time. In fact, to go out and measure it gets very tedious, and so time is a big part of it all. Funding, of course, is always something that does assist to get more resources out. So, you know, we're very diligent in utilizing the funds that we have, but being able to have more room for added resources is valuable. I would say, you know, that's a great combination of opportunity to just, you know, but more than anything, you're understanding that we are responsible to this, and we appreciate your questions. So please ask anytime. In regards to your comment about blasting the information on how to get a hold of us, Councilwoman Studley, sorry, I was thinking of the first name. We are actually, in addition to the contact info here, this conversation sparked a thought for me to connect with our IT team so that we may have an email line as well for folks that, you know, if you don't want to call, you just want to email directly, and also a fillable form. So if you don't want to, you know, just really lessening those steps for people. So these conversations help, as well as informing you, but also help to engage us to really think of other ways to support. So funding is open always. Time and patience is appreciated always. And if there's anything else that we can do on our end, let us know.
Okay. I would definitely, yeah. So for those that are watching that are concerned, the city is working on addressing the issues at the library, the central library. COVID and other factors have slowed things down a bit, but we are addressing these issues. I would definitely like to see us collaborate with, I know like we have the regulations and what we can do, but any, you know, ADA users or residents that have ADA issues that are users of the library, if they do have comments or suggestions or things they have noticed that is important to them that may be outside of what the regulations are. Another area where we may be able to go above and beyond if they have some suggestions like that we can work on. But I think based on my conversations with them, they would feel much better about it being a part of the whatever conversation about it, about as being users of the facility. And living that life, you know, firsthand. They might have some valuable, you know, perspective to share with us about how they get around the building and stuff. So I appreciate you putting this together. I hope the, you know, folks at Progressive Independence and any other folks in town that are interested or concerned about this are able to watch the replay of the meeting here, and please feel free to reach out to any of us on the council or to staff through the emails here on the slide if you have any comments or questions or anything about this discussion. So I don't think this will be the last time we talk about this. We'll probably, do you have any kind of idea about how long it might take to get all these? Maybe another year, or get these,
You know,
all these things addressed, or at least the bigger ones, I guess.
It'd be hard to put a timeline to the entire list, but I'm always open to providing an update. So if you would just like to schedule a follow-up, or work with Brenda, be happy to update you on where we are a few months down the road.
Are there similar issues at the East Side Branch Library?
I'll have to look into that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Haven't had any complaints.
I know the West Side was a existing building that we remodeled, so I'm not sure. Councilmember Hall?
Yeah, the other thing that just occurred to me is what is the role of the contractor? I mean, were these things, like when you mentioned that, for example, maybe the soap dispenser, 5 of them were fine and the 6th one was not quite where it needed to be. So do we have any recourse there?
Or even putting the buildings behind them.
I'll step
That's
up
weird.
just as
Okay.
far as this particular building goes.
Yeah.
Because once Terry left us, I became the project manager over that.
Congratulations.
It was, that was in September before they opened in November, so you can see it was towards the end. Once these things were brought to our attention in 2020, we did work with Flintco, who was the contractor, and PLS. A lot of the more egregious ones in the restrooms, like the kick plate under the sinks, the doors, we were having issues with that main door on the
Oh, that was
north.
terrible at the beginning. Yeah.
Other than those readers that are there. But the door itself had issues for a long time. So that was finally resolved, along with some of the bigger restroom issues. Now, some, while they are just within a half an inch or a quarter of an inch or whatever, because remediating that would have required tearing out a lot more, I chose to move past those because it was going to be way too costly. So there were other issues behind the house, in the stairwells, coming down by the fire risers. Those handrails didn't come down long enough either. All of those things were fixed during that first process. The timing of the doors, and as I understand now, obviously that must not hold forever because they're back where they aren't the right weight again, we know where they close. So that's something that just need to be checked periodically. But a lot of the signage that was listed on that report, and I was even guilty of it when I first looked at it, it did have the Braille impressions on it. You just couldn't see them because it was like a kind of almost opaque, little bit of a smoky see-through type of plastic. But then when you rub your hand on it, you could feel it. And I thought, okay, well, once we went back and looked at some of them, they were actually okay. And I'm sure he just must have missed it or whatever when he was looking at it. But just to give you kind of in retrospect, I mean, just an indication, for instance, the little restroom and the parlor in there, if that was the only restroom we had in this building, we would have to basically totally pull it out and redo it. There were over, when they did this building, 32 issues with just that little bathroom, 32 line items.
In that bathroom, there were 32 problems.
Wow. And none of them could be easily solved without ripping out the whole wall and starting over. So that is not the only restroom we have in this building. There are obviously handicap accessible restrooms, and we just made additional upgrades in those restrooms. So the ones we really tried to work on the most immediately with Flintco, because they were right at they had already received substantial completion and things of that. It did not absolve them from having to correct that.
That's really where I'm headed. Yeah.
So we did have them correct the bigger ones. We also had other issues going on with the building at the time, not ADA issues, but issues with leaks and other things that we were still working on with them, trying to resolve as kind of punch list items. And so they kind of got all rolled into one big list of things. So once we did the more egregious ones and more noticeable ones that people, honestly, we've never had a complaint about any of the restroom things. But then we would chose to do, for instance, if we could make one of the family restrooms on the second floor compliant without having to rip out the stuff in like the first floor and the third floor, there's allowances within the code, and I'm not an ADA expert by any means, but there were allowances where as long as you had one within so much of a distance or something like that, then you were okay. And so we did fix one, and chose not to tear up the others. I mean, it's just things like that. So there will be a lot of little things. The signage stuff obviously is not hard. You just have to order it and get it put up there. But some of those, when we went back, they were compliant already. And some of the things that you'll hear, like from citizens sometimes, where they want the bathroom door to have a push button. That's not required, as I understand it, and I don't know that any restroom that we have on any of our facilities has a push button to get in. I have no idea as far as going above and beyond what that would entail or cost, but some of the times the issues that you hear are not true violations. Some of them fall under for the library, some of them fell under the programming and services piece of it, which PLS provides. We do have a partnership with them. They provide the services and programming. We provide the structure. So on that issue, they wanted to partner as well. I mean, they want to be compliant too and make sure that what they're offering complies with everything. And some of it just was about moving furniture around, just so it's not in a certain path. I mean, that's how minute those details are.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's not huge building reconstruction type stuff. It's falls into programming as well, and just clear paths and stuff like that.
Are they gonna fix the door? Sorry.
That was something they agreed to do back in 2020. I'm not sure what is, what their timeline is for that, but literally that door is more than just a security thing, and also is their counter for people. That's kind of how they know how many people are coming in and out. So it is something that was grounded into the I mean, there's electric that goes up in there and everything. So it is a little bit more invasive than you think. It's not just like scooting them over.
Yeah.
But they have committed to doing that, but I do not know a timeline for it.
So I guess the other part of it that I was curious about is, when you're talking about funding and the kind of funding, and obviously we've closed out that project and are moving forward and all that sort of thing, but, it sounds like when we were talking about the pool and in the early stages of this, that there was an opportunity there for the contractor to, correct things. And
Right.
I just, if it was scoped and they didn't do it, then I'm assuming they're responsible for making sure that's right when you do a
And one thing
final.
I will say, and Jason can attest to this as well, because of what we ran up against in the library, which was maddening to someone that just got blessed with the project at the end, we have made a commitment at the city to any of our buildings now that are being renovated or new buildings going up. We are having Macintosh review those plans before the plans go out. So kind of a lesson learned, and that has helped us quite a bit on all the stuff that's going on right now.
And in our new buildings, which is Senior Center and Young Family Athletic Center, are going to be involved in the construction process and do evaluations during
I
construction.
think that's great. So,
Uh,
learn by
yes.
doing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it really is a time issue of just being able to allow for these pieces. Again, our facilities maintenance team are also taking care of, all of our other buildings. So it's getting into that schedule as well. I don't know, maybe at some point, Jason and I, we get creative and we have an ADA, a new position that's, maintenance, facilities focused on ADA roles, something to that effect. But we are working forward to remediate these things and definitely pulling in all our resources and partnership opportunities to make sure that we also keep all the other functions thriving across the city.
I think we should be proud of the commitment that the city is making in this area.
Yeah. Just making sure, spent all the money to build it. Let's make sure we take care of it and fix those issues. The other part of this was kind of folded in with just the general status.
Jason
Okay.
can do that part.
Thank you very much.
So happy
Appreciate
to
it.
pass
you.
that hat.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say. I'll take a seat. These seats are more comfortable anyways. So I inherited building maintenance back last October. And I asked building maintenance to send me a list once we found out we were going to give a little bit of an update. Just to let you know that this building is a little bit of a unicorn, and we take care of over 100 facilities in the city of Norman, and this building's a unicorn. This library has a lot of functionalities and a lot of different technology that's not in any of our other buildings. So some of it is very, very complicated, and we have to contract some of this out once we dig into it a little bit. And I'll give you a quick list of some of the stuff that we've already looked into and got fixed. And a lot of this, and we go back and look at Flinco, our contractor out there, we are outside of our warranty period. So now we are responsible for making these fixes. But the big one was the first one we had to fix in. And Brenda can testify to this, and it was very difficult, but it was the roof. We had, and all the leaks related to the roof. We had to go back in there and fix a lot of areas around there, and we're still going through there. We believe that we have fixed all the leaks. Now we're going through there and fixing all the problems that were related to the leaks. And that takes a little bit of time to hunt all that down. Another.
Does that mean it wasn't built right?
This one we go,
I
Brenda.
think-
She knows a little bit more about the roof than I do.
I certainly don't want to talk poorly about any contractor, but I think it's easy to say, not that it makes you feel very great, but any building that you build, new even, will end up with a leak or two, and you don't know that until it rains.
Till it's,
I don't know how to say that any other way, but there was a lot of difficulty with that building, like Jason said, because it is a unicorn, and there's so many things about it that has specialized equipment that we've never used before, or that has to be programmed, and then it has to talk to this equipment, and just stuff like that. That one has a green roof. That area was a big issue. Big issue. It
And not
wasn't
to mention
easy
the
to
green
fix.
roof has no accessibility to it, so you have to basically go to another roof and get on a
Yeah,
ladder
there's
to
like
get to the green
no
roof.
ladder to the green roof. And it's a really tall ladder to get on the other one. Because I was out there one day and I thought, I'm not going up that ladder. It was really tall. But there was a lot of issues with that too, and that's where some of the leak issues we had. The freezing weather froze the irrigation lines underneath the ground on that green roof the very first winter. I mean, just like all kinds of stuff like that. So they have remediated most of those,
Yes.
yes. And Flint Co. is involved in
Okay.
a lot of that.
And, the next one he had on the list is elevator. We do have periodic elevator shutdowns. He lists that because of and I believe we have 3 buildings with elevators, and this of course is our newest building with an elevator. And of course, a lot of technology goes into what we have now compared to what we did have or do have in our other buildings. And it relates to a lot of software problems. The other day, we had a problem with one of our elevators, and then we sent out one of our electricians to go work on it real quick, and the labels were for the elevators, there's 2 of them, were mislabeled, and they accidentally turned off the wrong elevator, and somebody was inside. We did get that person out. But even when you turn down or power down one of those elevators in that way, you have to go through an elevator contractor to get it powered back up correctly. We are not licensed
My worst nightmare.
to do that. And,
Stuck in an elevator.
and I'm looking down this list. He has about 6 items that are related to the HVAC system. They're the biggest problem right now, if you go over there on a hot day on the upper floors, it's a little bit warm. And the problem they're having now is that once again, a lot of technology involved into these HVAC systems. They do have safety systems that are inside of them. It has to relate if there's a fire or something like that. So if it, somehow these sensors inside there have gotten dusty. And as I'm sure this is probably, they might not have, it could be any number of things, I don't even want to speculate, but so the dustiness actually shuts down the HVAC system in certain areas, as it would be, it's a fire, you don't want to, throw in, have the HVAC rolling while there's a fire, because you could feed a fire, so it automatically shuts down, and they're working through that right now. He's listing boilers and chillers, trip. There is low pressure related to the geothermal loop. And here's the one that is probably, the geothermal loop is very complicated just because it's where it's located out, most portion of it's underneath the parking lot. And then there's also probably the one that's complicated that we can fix, but it's going to take 50 to 60 hours of labor, is induct panel, or the duct is going below the floor panel, so they're going to have to remove all the floor panel and work on some of that, because of just the moisture in there is basically making that swell, which is making floor panels pop. And then this another one is a chillers trip offline, and this is once again has to do with the technology. He has one thing under electrical system, and we have had constant problems with the lighting out there. Is this the once again, a unicorn. We're saying there's a lot of technology in there that we're not used to. Is that there's configurations and everything. So the configurations with it is not normal. Like here we have switches. There, it's all computerized. And if something faults, we have to either contract it out or get it serviced, or the manufacturer online to basically take steps through that. There's also a lot of hardware that was installed incorrectly, and they're going back through there and trying to solve that. And
That's been an ongoing issue with the
Yes.
HVAC from the very, very beginning. It's super sophisticated. A lot of it's below the floor, like you said.
And it's a LEED building too, which is probably,
So it has been an issue from the beginning. And there was a water pressure issue
Yes.
there when the
And
building
we
was
have
under
that on-
construction, and we had to put in some kind of specialized pumping thing to get it up over a certain table.
I have that on this list too, is low water pressure on the first and second floors, and it says redundant check valves. They're installed in the system that they need to have a consultant outside agency to help them get that repaired every time something fails in that.
Yeah, it pushes it up to the third floor. It's
So there-
just a lot of,
interesting.
There's a lot of things that go along with it, and then it's a very cool building, and it functions. I mean, don't get us wrong, it's opening and closing every day, and it serves its purpose, but there's
People work there.
yeah, there's this very complicated when it's this you're giving a jet plane to somebody that knows how to fly a prop plane. So
All this
it's,
modern architecture, man, I'm telling you. So I was like, we should just build a square.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes,
this building is also LEED
Yeah.
certified, and that was
Yeah.
a strong priority of council in the city. I think it's still a LEED silver.
yes.
That means it's highly energy efficient, highly high-tech. A lot of things Jason is mentioning here, we made them do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not making excuses for the contractor, but many of these systems are new, never seen them. There's no building in Norman like them. And so when you do new things, new products, new HVAC,
You get new problems.
you get new problems.
Yep.
You get things that haven't been worked out.
This is certainly our
So-
first building with the GOLs.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we sort of created a little bit of this monster ourselves. Still doesn't mean LEED's a bad thing, it means LEED's a good thing. But this is a highly complex building.
And the good news from a facility maintenance point of view, we under Brenda, the division expanded a lot, and we now have 2 trades in every trade. We have 2 workers in every trade. That's what I'm trying to get to. And the newer guys that we are hiring had dabbled into a little bit of what is out there and the newer stuff that's getting installed at our building. So we are slowly starting to figure it out, but it's just it's a long path to get there. And some of it we just simply can't do, and we have to contract it out when we have problems.
Staffing has always been an issue for facilities maintenance. They have a staff of 4 trade workers that do, or 6 trade workers that,
You're used to 4 because you just recently got 2 of them.
that do over 100 facilities, so 2 in each trade. But that's always been an issue.
Well,
And we have a new supervisor over there, and he actually came from Public Works, and I nicknamed him Nate the Great. He is going out there and he's making schedules and to make sure that we're properly maintaining things, and has a really different outlook, comes from the military, has a really different outlook on how to manage that division, and he is, I think that, you give him time and give him a year or 2 figuring out the library, and I think that he'll have it pretty well figured out in that time period.
I would be interested to know staffing for facilities maintenance, current staffing, and how many buildings have we added since the last time we added a position?
Yeah, I have all that information
I
because
think-
I've used it in the past.
I think
but
that
you-
would be helpful for all of us.
Yeah, but even when you do comparisons, I mean, I've done that over the years too, where I'm looking at it doesn't even get close to comparing to what, even cities our size that have the same, not the same number, but, close to the same number, they will have double or triple a number of employees. And, and when I first came in the late 80s, we had a construction crew that actually did made like shelving and stuff like that. We had a painting crew. So we have far less in that division now than we did 30-plus years ago. So, I mean, I'm sure there was reasons that had to happen that way, and so on and so forth, but,
Has it been in favor of contracting all that out instead? And has that been beneficial?
not necessarily. Well, I shouldn't say that. We used one of our former custodial coordinator. We have one custodial coordinator that works with our daytime custodian and our contracted custodial staff, and they kind of also doubled as a general handyman.
Right.
You go work on this door lock, or you go,
It's our video.
but actually constructing stuff, like in Building C, we used to have a huge counter when building permits was over there and things like that, just millwork built-ins. They actually did that type of stuff. Our staff can't do that. I mean, they don't have the skill set or the time, honestly.
Yeah, with 2 electricians, two HVAC guys, and 2 plumbers, and that's the extent of our trades workers for over 100 buildings.
Yeah.
And then we just rely on trying to contract the rest,
Anything big,
which means we
yes.
have to wait sometimes too.
Yep.
Well, I think that is a conversation the council needs to think about going forward. Because again, just investing all this money into these new buildings, and then, they just won't last as long, won't look as nice for as long if we're not able to keep up, and if we're adding all these new buildings but not adding any new people. And we talk about that in every city department.
Every
It's
department.
population grows and,
Yeah,
you know.
but it's important too, great point, that, as we're thinking ADA, since that's the topic of the conversation, is that, again, this is just one of the buildings, right?
Yes.
And so being able to have support to go out and help us ensure that, that our other buildings are also taken care of for that public access is important, but it does come back to that support of,
Yeah.
yeah.
And with this one
Workforce.
specifically, because it's so prominent and used, and it's probably, I would say, at least before and probably still now, the most used public building in the city of Norman is that library.
Well, and it needs to be our crown jewel.
Yeah,
I mean, it needs to stay.
yeah.
And that it is a challenge. But in all fairness, I will say, when I first took over facility maintenance in 2008, our facilities were in such bad shape. And it was our rec centers that first brought it to light to the council level, to where they, under former Councilmember Coverly's reign and finance chair, that was something he really, really was passionate about and worked on. And they infused, starting with FY09, quite a bit of capital funds towards facilities. Now, we did contract that out because it was roof replacements and
Sure.
HVAC replacements, and we replaced over 20-something roofs, and just things like that. So we have been able to do a lot, but it was just a blip on the map of what needs to be done.
And we've, too, to go on with what we've recently done out there, our park planning staff did go through there and replace a portion of the landscaping out there where it
That's
is
the-
now,
yeah, right.
now where you can have sight lines going in and out of the door and exiting out there on, I believe it's Acres, I always forget the road out there, but.
And that's, I was going to ask about that too. That's working out okay since we made that change.
And we're about ready in July, which on our part is because it's a now a park property that we maintain. We're handing over outside landscaping maintenance to the library. They're going to take care of it starting July, and we're trying to get it ready for them in the shape that it will be easily maintained for them. And it's mowing certain areas to make sure we have proper sight lines, and also visually it just appears better to a majority of the public.
And I really appreciate hanging on to the original concept in areas where it's more appropriate. So,
And like we've
Yes.
said 1,000 times, there was a lot of species that got stuck in there that were not supposed to be in there. That's just
Ended up.
Oklahoma.
yeah, it's really looking good.
mentioned it to Daryl once before, but a trash can at the bus stop.
We're working on that. We just, at bus stops, they usually put like a Rubbermaid trash can. We don't want that outside, so
Sure.
we've ordered a trash can, a permanent trash can, which is kind of the same things that we have our park properties, is gonna be permanently installed there and look a little bit more aesthetically beautiful in front of that, art piece.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say, Council Chair, sometimes putting a trash can at the bus stop exacerbates the problem. So we want to give it time
Yeah.
and make sure it's truly needed, because magically more trash appears when you put trash can. We just want to be cautious, but we are working with.
Doesn't all
works
make
to
it in the
get
can?
Yeah, it was like one day I drove by and there was like styrofoam things and cups all around the bus stop. I was like, okay.
Somebody had a great lunch out there. I think I remember when you were talking.
Okay, so for the council, going forward, I think, like we just mentioned, we as a body need to think about staffing as we do with everything, but especially in this area, again, because we've added so many new buildings, we're adding more buildings that are more difficult and complicated to take care of than what we've had before. And so with that, and I think that's been a discussion about Norman Forward since the beginning was, we're going to build these things, are we going to be able to have the staff to maintain them? Because that wasn't part of necessarily Norman Forward funding to maintain everything. So, okay, well, I appreciate the update on that. If there are any other questions or comments you guys have?
Good,
Okay.
good discussion, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time working on that. Appreciate the update. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.